All right. Welcome to episode 2 of the Weiss Method. For those who don't know, my name is Wolf Hamill. This is Elizabeth Hamill, who I am with. She is a Weiss Method practitioner, and I'm her nephew. And I'm here to basically discuss the Weiss Method with her. In our first episode, we actually spoke about what the Weiss Method was, the different things that the Weiss Method treats, a little bit of the background and the history behind the Weiss Method. And today we are here for episode 2 to discuss how energy works in the body, how that applies to the Weiss Method, and how this also applies to remote treatments. So we're really excited for episode 2, and we're glad to have you guys all here for everyone that's listening. Elizabeth, if you just want to go into it and start talking a little bit about how energy works in the body, so we can better understand that.
Sure. And it's another huge subject, Wolf. It's important to make the point that what we're doing here is really a light touch on the high points of the subject matter, and to really make small steps into it, because the understandings run very deep in their scope, and we can only really touch the high points here. So it's just important to state that this is not the end all be all, and there's going to be a lot of content coming in this one. So please, once I get through the first run of it, ask me some questions if you want to open any particular point inside of that. So let's make a start. Firstly, we have the honor of living inside of a very profoundly advanced, highly capable, and extremely trainable human complex body. This thing that we have had all of our lives. And so that, along with the electromagnetic intelligence that comes along with the model of the human, that is what we're going to be looking at today, how energy works inside this amazing complex that we've been gifted with. So unfortunately, we don't get a manual at birth. We didn't get that, and nobody got it. So it's part of our lifelong task to figure out how things work. Alongside of that, we have the human model. We've got a male and a female model. And inside of that, each human is unique. There are no two alike. The model is the blueprint, the template, is recognizable life to life, but there is a uniqueness inside of each and every human. And that's a very important point to remember inside of this. So now, the next step is to do with the fact that we have an extraordinary set of automatic systems. So these automatic systems are an array of ongoing biochemical processes, such as everything. I mean, can you imagine if you had to think about your next breath? Can you imagine if you had to think about, oh, I need to blink my eyes now? Or, the fact that your heart beats to keep the blood circulating, et cetera, et cetera. These are very important things that go on a second by second basis, but we don't have to think about them, thereby rendering them part of our automatic systems. And what a gift that is, in so many ways. So that's a glimpse about the automatic systems. And then you can imagine that the other array of systems are the systems that actually, it's not so much the systems, it's the fact that we have free choice. So we get to choose, oh, I'm going to lift my arm. I'm going to put my arm back down. We get to choose that. We get to choose so many things. And it's one of the things that separates us from being human, as a human, from other life forms on this planet. We get free choice. And it's interesting it's called free choice because actually our choices do come with consequences. And those consequences are not necessarily free. But we have the freedom to make those choices, no matter what the consequences. Nobody, except for early on, with our parental guidance, they're going to try and guide us into making the right kind of choices. But generally speaking, adults make their own choices. And it's an important part of this story that we're telling about the Weiss Method. So those are the two energetic overarching systems at play. And within the automatic systems, there are various energetic centers responsible for different systems, such as the thinking center. Okay, generally happens in the brain. Then there is the what we call the moving center, which energetically is based in the stomach area. And then there is the instinctual center, which is the center that actually, one of its function is to keep us safe. So it's the part of us that quickly pulls your hand away from the fire on the stove. So you don't get burned, as an example. There's so many ways in which you could think about this particular center. And that's the automatic aspect of the instinctual center. It goes much deeper than that, as each of these do. And then the next center to think about is the emotional center. And that's located in the nose and the throat. And that is to do with our connections with others. It's got a very, very high part as well. And it's how we actually can perform all kinds of different higher functions in our life. And then the last center I'm going to talk about here is the sexual center. And that's located, of course, in the genitals. And that center is not just responsible for having sex. It, again, has a much higher function than that. But that's an easy way to understand what it's there for. And it is all five of those centers play a very big part in our everyday life, particularly the moving center. Located in the stomach. And I kind of want to focus in there because that is where we train different habits. So any new skill we pick up, anything we do repetitively, actually gets lodged in the moving center. And it is basically, it remembers how to do something. It's like, when you learn to ride a bike, how many times did you have to learn to ride a bike? Just once.
Yep.
Rhetorical question. Everybody knows the answer to that one. And so it remembers all that. It's part of its function. And it will do whatever it is we repetitively ask it to do. And I know we don't do that consciously, but if we do something over and over again, that's where it gets lodged and remembered. And you can kind of get a sense of this is going with unwanted habits and addictions. So the centers are one layer of the energetic systems at play inside of the human. And there are many other energetic qualities that each of our, say, organs actually house. So each of our organs has a different and very precise function inside of our lives. And that's a whole nother area to look at. And And then, of course, there's the soul and the spirit, which is our higher lives that are a very important part of our ongoing scenario. And as I said in the beginning, it's a huge territory, and we're just going to touch on the high points here. So why does it matter to know about these intricate systems? What's, they're all working for us anyway, so why do we need to know about them? One may ask. And you may also ask, well, what does it have to do with unwanted habits and addictions? And the answer to that question is absolutely everything. And not just as a practitioner, but it's important that a person who wants to release themselves from unwanted habits and addictions understand that really being conscious of things and how they work in the body does assist in winning one's life back. Okay? Because becoming conscious of what is in the driver's seat of one's life allows us to make better choices. Okay. Now I know that's I think that's episode 4.
Yep.
So we're touching on why that's important here. We won't open that up until episode 4. The moving center, back to that for a moment, is one of the 3 what we call ringleaders of the unwanted habit and addictive cycles. The other 2 players are the brain up here in the thinking center, but more the brain, because the thinking center is actually lodged in the brain, but the brain has many other functions inside of the whole than just the thinking center. So the brain, the stomach, and the blood. Those 3 are the energetic ringleaders of the habitual life. I talked to you a little bit already about the moving center and how our habits and skills sets and everything gets lodged there. And whether we can change those habits, that's really, as everybody knows, it's not so easy. And yet it can be done. And, that's where the Weiss Method comes in with the unwanted habits and addictions, is we do interrupt that cycle energetically at the root cause. So to cap this small run in how energy works in the human body, realize that everything that you think about, everything that you have experienced in your life, everything that you believe in, everything that you long for, everything that you want, everything that you love is with you the whole of your life. And it actually lives in the bioenergetic field. It lives inside the body as well in some organs, but it also is lodged in the unseen parts of our bioenergetic field, also known as the aura. Everybody's got one. There's no doubt about it. Some people can see it and some people can feel it. It is absolutely real and is a very important function, plays a very important function and part in our ongoing lives. So, and that's where we clean and rebalance a lot of things so that a person can get a fresh start. So, yeah, that's really the starter into this area.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a lot of information there, obviously, but it's very fascinating. Going into the aura a little bit, how does that work energy wise?
So everything that has a metabolic process also has an unseen worlds part to that. Okay? Because there's the physical part, and then there's the part that the energy that metabolic process gives off produces. And so it's just, if you look at, the physical part, right? That is at the clunky end of the bar, you could say. But it is a bar in that there are varying parts to everything that we see that are more and more rarefied. So everything that lives has some sort of a casing, a unseen world part to it. So what was the question again?
Just how energy and the aura works, because
Okay, so
it sounds
right,
like
so you're like, let's just take an example of an activity. You're going out for a jog, say, right? And you're running and you're expending all this energy, right? And this is kind of a coarse example, but it works. And so you can just imagine that energy just sort of clearing out maybe some of the pathways in your bioenergetic field, your aura. And that's what it does. And you feel, more balanced when you come back because you've expended some crusty energy that you don't need anymore.
makes a lot.
So there's energy, it can become static energy, which is kind of like clutter in the aura. So it's important, that we take showers. That also is a very cleansing thing to do to clear out one's energy paths. It's very basic. Water is a very cleansing aspect, both taking it internally and also taking showers. That cleans the aura really nicely. So does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the next question is really just like, you talked about these different energy centers specifically. How does the Weiss method tap in with those energy centers when you're going about the treatment?
Well, we don't necessarily tap into the energy centers specifically, but we do work with, and I think I mentioned this in the first episode, um, with a light touch, we do access some of the inner organs, specifically the stomach and say the adrenals as well, also the brain, and and all we're doing is using those meridian lines to access those to clean and rebalance things. We don't like change anything. It's not like that at all. It is just about clearing and rebalancing things back to their natural state. And that's why some things take more than one treatment, because it's a little bit more stubborn. But some things can be dealt with just one treatment. So yeah, that's why and we'll talk more about that in the next episode, actually, to do with the addictive cycle.
Absolutely. And in doing that treatment, is that something that can be done only in person, or is this something that works remotely as well?
It does work remotely, which is an amazing thing, and it's good to ask that question now while we just talked about how energy works in the body, because I don't know if you're familiar with this. We call it the tuning fork principle, which is that if you have two tuning forks that are on the same frequency, and you ring one and the other one is in proximity, it will also start to resonate and ring without ringing it. So that is what we call sympathetic resonance. Okay. So that is the principle upon which a remote or at distant treatment will work. And the way that it works specifically with the Weiss method is that we require a photograph of a person in a specific neutral type of posture. And the practitioner works with that photograph and the person being on the other end of a phone line. So if you think of that picture of the person and the person themselves as the two tuning forks, and then the energy going really through the air to that person from the photograph via the practitioner, that's how it works. So you don't have to be in the room. And it's actually proven to be very effective to treat remotely. Many times people feel much more relaxed in their own ecology. They don't have to leave the comfort of their home. They're usually laying on their bed or sitting in a chair. And there is a connection made with the client and practitioner via Zoom, so that there is some sort of physical, connection there, and that we know what each other looks like, and all is well there, and that helps with the flow. And it would work otherwise, but we've got this to deal with too, the psychological aspect of it, and then it works just as well in the chair. But remote treatments are very successful, and particularly in these times of the pandemic, it has caused the opportunity for many people to be treated remotely, where we wouldn't be able to do that, particularly in the early days of the pandemic. So yeah, that's how they work.
Absolutely. That's great to hear. That's great to hear. And it's great to hear that they're equally as effective being remote as well. Great. Well, I think we touched on a lot of stuff energy wise, and understanding how energy works in the body, and also how this applies to the Weiss method, and how that can happen both with in-person treatments as well as remotely. Is there anything else that we want to touch on in terms of how energy is working in the body, or how this applies to the Weiss method in this episode?
I think we pretty much covered it, Wolf. I think there's always much more to open up, and I think that will come in future episodes. Yeah, unless you have any other questions that come to mind at the moment.
Absolutely. I think just the last question I'd have is, I think this for some people might be more open to this whole idea and understanding of how energy works in their body than others. Would you say for the Weiss method to be as effective as possible, this person needs to be really open to, understanding their own energy and how that works, and being open to, clearing that out, as you said?
Such a great question. And the answer is no. I've treated I've treated people that this one person, I was just getting ready to treat them, and they look right up at me and they go, "Do I have to believe that this is going to work for it to work?" And the answer was no. It works regardless. The responsibility of the person really is, after the treatment, to allow things to settle in, to respect the fact of it, and don't. I've had some people like test it. Well, I'm just going to test this. I don't really feel like I want another cigarette, but I'm just going to see if and that's really stupid, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So no, people do not have to believe in how the energy works in the body or anything other than the fact that, like I said in the first episode, they just really need to want to let go of the unwanted habit or addiction. So
Absolutely. That's great to hear. Well, I think it's been a phenomenal episode, episode 2 of this series. In the next episode, episode 3, we're going to be touching more on that addiction cycle specifically, and how the addiction cycle works. I know there's a lot that goes into that, so definitely looking forward to touching on that. But it's been a great episode for everyone that's listening. By the time you're listening to this, episode 3 will be already be live. If you haven't seen the first episode, definitely go check that out to hear more about the Weiss Method and the background and how Elizabeth got involved. But thank you for listening, and we're really excited to have you guys continue on the journey with us.
Great. Thank you, Wolf.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye-bye.